and also invalidate the password, which basically means next time they log in, they need to reset their password. So I'll ask them for their previous password, and then they just have to enter what they choose for their new password. There are also configurable rules that you can set up to how secure the password has to be, whether or not it has to contain symbols, characters, numbers, what its minimum and maximum lengths are. You can go through and you can actually change that from the password configuration file.
So, Logan, can you go back to the password maintenance?
Sure.
So invalidate user password is not locking the user. It will still let them in. It's really a force change on next login.
Correct.
So lock might, I can see where both would be useful.
Yes.
Force change on next login. I might not want to remove them because it's been recorded in data files and I want to keep it for record keeping purposes.
When you remove the user, it no longer actually deletes the configuration file, it moves it out of the way. It gives it a different extension, so the user can no longer log in, but their configuration file is still in place. It'll also keep their previous passwords saved in the password database, the encrypted file that stores all the GI passwords. So that way they still maintain their history of previous passwords. So if you want to go re-add the user, they'll still have the previous password saved in there.
And you would do that with the add-on?
Correct.
Just use the same name?
Yep, you do that. In addition, I also made it so that you no longer have one admin account. You can assign different users to be an administrator. These administrator accounts have the rights to log into GIadmin as well as into fileProGI and filePro Web. And the GIadmin account also is considered a GI account now, so you can sign in using that.
Is there an indication of which ones are admins?
Yep, right next to it. See GIadmin where it says admin? That's what it is. If I go here, I can also change admin rights, hit yes, and now I have an admin as well.
Brian, do you have the ability to set somebody as the master administrator?
There is currently no way to set whether or not someone has more or less privileges than somebody else. It's all either they are an administrator or they're not an administrator. That could be a future enhancement to prevent, let's say you have someone in there that wants to, that for some reason wants to go and remove administrator privileges from everyone else. That would make sense as something to add. So that could be done.
Yeah, I think you should do that so that.
Have one true account basically.
Is this a standard feature for 6.0?
Yes, it is.
It's included?
Yes, it's included. There's also command line utilities that can be used that do the exact same thing. And those are available in both Nix systems and Windows.
You want to explain the benefits of the hard key has been replaced, like if you lose your session?
There's also been new session disconnect code that's been added. It will go through and actually detect whether or not a socket is still valid, and as soon as it is detected by the operating system as an actual disconnected session, it'll tell filePro to exit, and if it fails to exit, it will force it to exit. So it'll go through and it'll try to clean it up the best that it can. You should no longer have instances where you just have a random hanging session out there stuck through FPDaemon. It should go through and clean itself up.
If you hard kill your GI here, it should refresh.
It will refresh, yes. I will go ahead and do that. So here, I'll hit the red X, exit now. There you go. They're all cleaned up.
So when a user's connected to the GI server, and it says, hey, print this report, and I've got a file on my Linux server where it says for each user ID, is this user allowed to print this report? Does his user ID get passed through from the GI server?
It does.
The server?
Yep, the standard variables like log name that are set on the Nix systems are also passed through by GI server.
So, but does that user need a user ID, a login on the Linux server at that point?
That depends. If you want it to be able to be saved in, let's say, like the header of like one of your records, and you go in, like you can check like your creation date and stuff like that. In order to save it that way, yes, they would have to have a user account on that machine as well. Otherwise, you will just be able to get the username by querying those values. Yes. So, yes.
I was going to ask, on a Nix system, you got to create the user in Linux, in the Nix system for the character base. If you want that user to get the GI on a PC, you got to create them on here.
Correct.
If you have a web user, like he was asking, do you need to create them on the Unix server and on this, or just on this?
It's just on this. It's the same concept as GI. They work identically. The only difference is what client you're connecting through.
And then what happens when that user through the FP web creates a record? Do you get the name that you created for them through here?
It'll
recorded
pull
as
in,
the-
it gets set in the environment and pulled in through the environment. You still have the limitation of whether or not it's going to pull in the user ID or the user ID of filePro, depending on the way that you have your installation set up. So if they do have a user account, it will attempt to switch to their user account.
To what's on the Nix system?
Correct.
If they don't, it'll be this one.
Yep, it will set their effective user ID to whatever the ID is of that user.
Good. Okay. So you don't have to create them in both places, it's a web access only for that person.
Correct.
When you buy FP GUI server,
Mhm.
and then that's part of your server license, or your development license? Doesn't have times on that, I guess.
It's-
And then they have to client, so
Mhm.
that put onto the Windows boxes, and you're buying X number of those little executables for each different window. Is that a session, or is it each time they open one?
You still have the limitation of your actual license for filePro. So those accounts, those programs are still handled the same way. The only difference is you are now licensing GI users. Those GI users can use either of the sessions like you previously could, like where you have the combined development and runtime now, where you can go through and then have, you would combine your development and runtime for like logging into, let's say, ArtClerk or something like that. Same concept applies, but here your GI licenses just say, I'm allowed to have this many sessions back to filePro. So, and those are both.
You can have it on as many PCs as you wanted to, it's gonna, I can count that. It's gonna
Correct.
count
It
the
counts
sessions when-
concurrent
when it's
sessions.
first.
How many concurrent active connections? Yes,
Doesn't matter where, how many PCs.
correct. It could be installed on as many pieces as you want, as long as only X number of people are logged in at any point in time.
Logged in or run declared report?
Logged in a program, just logged in period. If they're logged into GI, it's using a session. So that connection requires that.
But
Yes.
that will only ever use one session for
Correct.
that
For the
login.
entire duration. So they could be 5 programs deep at that point through system commands, and will only ever use one session.
If they log into GI from
Right.
another machine
Right.
with the same username, that'll count as a second session, the same as it would in Unix.
Clerks running.
It's the number of
Logins
actual
connections.
Yes.
But you're saying if they're sitting at the menu, at the main menu, or at our main menu, user menu, that's counting as a session?
Through GI, yes, because what it does is it maintains how many people are actively connected. A session is basically a connection. So if you're connected, you're using up an active user. So,
Where if you're a Nix user, it doesn't count you until you actually go into a declerk or a D-report. Like a
in-
character base.
In character base, it will only count once you go into the program. Yes.
Is everybody square or straight on this session deal? In other words, if you log in once and try to open F1, 2, 3, 4, 5, that's going to be per session open logged on. We're still at sessions. We're not down to one user logging into the system with 5 open connections. It's still per session. That has not
Per
changed.
login.
So if you open 2 FP GUI.
If I got
client
one,
sessions
if I got
on
one
your
login
Windows
here,
PC, that's
and I've got
2
3
licenses.
sessions on my, I got my login, and I got 2 other sessions, that's 3 sessions.
So somebody sitting at their PC
Yeah.
using FP web.
In other words, we
five
had this
sessions.
confusion for a number of years, where I've got one PC, but I want to open up F1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, it's, when you open that second login is a session, and therefore it is using one of your licenses.
And here's an example. I just opened up
It's
2.
using 2 of your licenses now.
Pardon?
It's using 2 now. Right.
Each session
Right.
uses a license.
Whenever you log in, that's a session.
Right. So right now, I just opened up 2 copies of fileProGI, and you can see here there's 2 sessions currently in use, one for each program that's currently open
From the same PC.
from the same PC.
So one person could, is there a way you limit how many sessions they're allowed to open?
That's a feature that we're actually thinking about implementing.
So one person could say, I like 6 or 7. and they-
Yep. We're thinking about adding in a variable to restrict how many concurrent sessions per user are allowed.
But you're only talking about filePro GUI, because on filePro, you cannot have in the same PC two
Correct.
open sessions together.
Correct, unless you're on Windows through like an SSH client or some other terminal service.
With the GUI, but not on the regular file.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
don't. If you're in Windows and you launch a batch file to a text version of filePro, and then you launch it again, and you launch it 3 times, each of those counts as a separate session. What doesn't count as a separate session is you're sitting in an R clerk and you system out to another R clerk. That doesn't count because it's nested under the first one.
And it
You
will-
can't use the one you jumped out of until you're done with the one you nested into. So those they changed years ago.
And you can only have one per PC?
No,
No.
On clerk? No.
No,
Well,
have as many as you want,
we do it all the time.
up to your license.
I have a client that opens up 5 windows, and until they hit the clerk or a report session, it's not counted. So you can open up a desktop as long as it's
I'll show it to you
on
on
the
my PC
menu
after the meeting.
and not count as a session. In the non-GUI version.
Yeah.
I thought it was.
All right.
But it's the same user count, right?
Yes,
Yep. So it's my same license file, same number of users.
As long as the character kit sessions are capable of matching what you have a need for GI. Because you could have, let's say, 20 characters and 5 GIs, but if you don't have any more character license to carry those GIs, they're not going to open.
Are character licenses different than GI licenses?
Yes.
Then you can have
It's still an
15
add-on, the
if
GI is an add-on.
So a GI, is a GI taking up one GI license and a filePro license, or just the GI?
Yes, of course, because under the
Which of course?
Both.
Yes, it's
Both.
taking
Yes,
up
it's
both.
using both.
So if somebody logs in twice from their PC, they're using 2 GI licenses.
If they use
File
GI.
Pro.
I have
Right,
users
that's what
that
I'm
will
saying.
do 5 sessions. They'll log in twice through the GI login icon and 3 times through the batch file text one. That will use 5 run times, because they're all run in filePro, and 2 of my more expensive GI interface licenses. Because only 2, in fact, sometimes I'll tell clients, how many of your people are going to want Graphical?